Hi Taka, thank you for joining us. Welcome to the Tony Tan Show and podcast.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure, Tony.
All right, today we're going to talk about a very interesting topic, and I look at your bio and I know that you were the right guy to do this, right? I mean, you are the head of Copper, which is a crypto broker in Asia, right? And I know that it's quite a well-known brand, and you are also a very successful podcaster for your own show as well, The Future Design. Right? And I've seen all your podcasts, and it is really interesting content that you put there. You're also an educator for leaders and companies on the power of crypto as well as blockchain. Right? And you spent 17 years as an investment banker with hedge funds and financial institutions like JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs. Well, that's a lot to process, and that's a lot for a person to go through in life. So a very warm welcome to you, Taka.
Thank you so much, Tony. I'm really delighted.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that I want to start with is, I'm a history student myself. I think there's three greatest mysteries in this world, according to me, right? First, we couldn't find the tomb of Alexander the Great. It was never discovered. Secondly, we couldn't find the tomb of Genghis Khan, another world famous conqueror. And the third one that everybody's asking, all our audience are asking, who is Satoshi Sakamoto?
So there's a big myth around who he actually is. I mean, it could be one person, it could be a group of people of cyberpunks or cryptographers who nobody knows. And I think that the most important thing about knowing about him is not actually who he is, but what he represents. And when he came out with his white paper in 2008 about how the financial institutions are pretty much dysfunctional at this point, right? So if you remember in 2007 and 2008, we had the subprime mortgage crash, and a lot of the institutions failed in supporting this market of capturing this dysfunctional monetary policies around it, or even the regulations around looking at in these financial institutions that were creating these CDOs and CDS around these products. And what was more important about his movement was that it's not just only about the regulations or about how monetary policy has actually transferred wealth from the poor to the rich by injecting a lot of capital and saving a lot of companies. Is that it was important that people understood that their freedom is actually their responsibility, right? And their financial freedom is about their responsibility. And then he wanted to show, or he or she wanted to show, that having Bitcoin or some kind of currency that's away from the governmental control is the most important part of that. And of course, it came with a lot of difficulties. As you know, in the beginning, a lot of people had Bitcoins, they put it in their thumb drive, stuck it in their pocket, and it kind of disappeared, right? So it really shows that it's not easy to gain your freedom, as with any political movement, right? And but the thing is, what's important is that you have to remember that having this freedom comes with great responsibility, and also with that you can create a huge amount of difference in this world, which I thought was a brilliant way to show people that this is the way forward.
Right. And I understand that this technology is built on the fundamental designs of blockchain, right? And I think recent years, especially the last 2-3 years, blockchain has got a lot of recognition, right? A lot of big MNCs are coming on board. We have PayPal, we have DBS Bank, Standard Chartered, even Ant Financials. They're starting to recognize technologies like that. And there's a lot of talk about blockchain, but what exactly is blockchain, Taka? I mean, it is something that, is it possible to distill it in such a way that even a layman could understand the fundamentals of blockchain?
Yeah, sure. So how Bitcoin was actually created, blockchain in itself is just kind of a byproduct of it, right? And the way that Satoshi Nakamoto designed this blockchain is that fundamentally it's a store of data, and how we store the data, and how do you ensure that they're encrypted so that you don't have hackers coming into it and trying to hack your data. So now, if you think about the evolution of how we store data, first it was paper-based, and then it got into data servers, or your own kind of computers. You have data servers. Now you have the cloud. Now, is that the most safe way to store your data? Probably not, because you've seen so many companies like Yahoo or Equifax or all these companies getting hacked with their data. I think a couple of years ago in Singapore, the Sing Health and a couple of other health organizations also got their health data hacked as well, and they're either probably on a data server somewhere or some in clouds. So, is there a better way to store data than just relying on a third-party database, data server, and be able to kind of spread that data storage out more globally rather than being centralized?
I see.
So the word decentralized originally came from there. Is how do you store data across so many different people who are willing to support the blockchain network? And by doing so, you have a lot of people who are doing like crypto mining and being nodes or computers who are offering their computer space so that these ledgers of transactions can be recorded on those computers.
Yeah.
Is that complicated?
So what you're saying that this is a totally decentralized technology compared to a centralized technology, because by being decentralizing your data, there is no way for you to actually compromise because it is decentralized to thousands of machines out there, right? And I think that's the power of the decentralization concept, right? And it's almost impossible to hack a decentralized concept compared to a centralized system. So I think that is one of the tenets of the capability of blockchain. Did I get it correctly?
Yeah. So basically, let's say there's let's say I'll use Bitcoin as an example, right? So there's a lot of nodes or computers that are storing the transactional data of Bitcoin, and there's about 10,000 computers out globally in the world that are saving the same transaction data and updating it in milliseconds as it gets updated. Right. So in order for a hacker to hack that information, they'll have to hack those 10,000 computers instantaneously and change the transaction data, and then and there's already $1 billion worth of reasons why you want to hack Bitcoin, right? You want to steal your Bitcoins, but you can't because that transaction data is so spread out and it's very difficult to and it's encrypted and it's difficult to hack.
Right. So the other word that we use for this is distributed, I guess. Decentralized, distributed. These are the keywords for blockchain, right?
Yes.
And then the other thing that a lot of people is talking about is that they don't want big G or government centralized controls, because there's a lot of talk about whether is that a good thing, right, to have government involved. And we want to give the power back to the individuals or the corporates who are going to do a point-to-point transaction. So in that case, with the power of blockchain, what are some of the applications that you are seeing that is widely adopted today by some of these institutions that is powering this blockchain movement?
I still think the best product market fit for blockchain right now is still in the financial area. Right. So you have Bitcoins and all these cryptocurrencies that are actually revolutionizing how trade settlements are happening. So if you think about the traditional capital markets, where nowadays, when I was back in my hedge fund times, I was still doing my own trades. And even back then, you were saying this is like 5 years ago, right? We were talking about how there were all these bots, and people are renting out data servers near the securities exchanges or stock exchanges in order to place the orders milliseconds faster than the competition. So they wanted to be close to the stock market data servers as possible, right?
Reduce latency.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But at the same time, the trade settlements happen T+2. 2 days after the trade settles, right? It's completely ridiculous when you have like high-speed bots trading at milliseconds, and then you have 2 days where you actually settle. I mean, this is completely ridiculous in this world where automation can be done to the finest detail, and you're still working on a trade settlement basis. That was when people were standing up in the middle of the stock exchange, swinging their arms around and trying to exactly. Yeah. So 20 years ago, right? So it's the trade settlements have to be completely updated, and I think blockchain is definitely the way to go in this, right? Obviously, and I think that's the main huge use case for this. And I know there are some stock exchanges that have or or looking to experiment with blockchain technology to speed up their trade settlements. So that's one. And the other industry that I do see some adoption is the supply chain management. So there's a company called Maersk, which is a Danish oceanic transportation company that's probably number one in this industry, and they teamed up with IBM and Accenture to start this consortium called TradeLens. Now, TradeLens now currently has probably 50 to 60% of all the entire value chain of the supply, supply chain supply chain chain on TradeLens. But still, the concept of like blockchain in itself, where you have different types of companies trying to share data so that you can reduce fraud, you could reduce the paperwork that's associated in invoicing and etc. It's very difficult for everybody in this kind of whole value chain to say, okay, well, join one system. Right? Because there's no central authority telling them you have to do this, right? It's completely global. And if you want to have everybody and every single trucking company or freight railroader or whoever they are to come onto this thing is going to be really, really difficult. But I still see the value of having everybody on. So it's not really a matter of technology, but it's about the people who are actually kind of preventing this or being the bottleneck of all this thing happening. And I think that I could go on. I mean, there are other use cases. Let's say we're in the middle of this kind of COVID pandemic, and people governments want to issue vaccine passports. You could obviously put that in a blockchain as well, and make sure that people in their mobile device say that I have a vaccine record on blockchain, which is it can be verified as true data, and use that as well. But what is preventing it? Probably the health organization don't want to share these kind of information, or even medical records can be on blockchain too. But that also has to be agreed upon different health organizations to make that happen, right? And so a lot of things, the technology is there, right? Obviously, it's just really the people who are kind of preventing that from happening.
I think Takai, what you point out is a very interesting point. For every new technology, a very transformative technology that comes into play, through the history of mankind, right, there will always be powerful forces. Of course, we are changing the status quo, right? It's going to ruffle a lot of feathers out there, right? For this to change will take a bit of time, right? I think people has always been an issue for any type of technology adoption. So you're right. I think that love to point out the point that technology is here, but whether are we adopting it, sometimes it's a people or political issues, right? But I also understand that another term that we use a lot in blockchain is the word contract, right? Can you comment a little bit about this thing called contract?
You mean the smart contracts?
Yes.
Yeah. So Bitcoin, when it first started out as a blockchain technology, was very simple. It was a transactional data that was recorded on blockchain. Now, since 2013, there's this new foundation called Ethereum that came up with this new protocol for blockchain that's Ethereum, and how they differentiated themselves from the original Bitcoin is they added on these smart contracts.
Right.
So it's an automated system to transfer value or information between one party to another. So if you want to do Bitcoin transactions, you actually have to go to an exchange and trade it, or if you have to pass it on to, obviously it's still you could do peer-to-peer, but you have to take that action to transfer, right? Whereas the smart contracts actually automate that. So let's say, I'll take the supply chain management example. Let's say you fulfill a certain service to a company A, then company B has to pay a certain amount of payments, right? So so let's say the company A says yes, company B has served its purpose, they provided their service, so they say, okay, so I'll make payment. They'll click, and then it will automatically transfer that money over to the party B. Basically, very simply, that's kind of what it is in a nutshell. But obviously, you can tailor this contract in many ways so that you can fit whatever necessities of that platform. Right.
And there is this talk about there's different type of blockchain. There's a private and a public blockchain. What is really the difference between these two?
So Bitcoin, Ethereum, they're all public blockchains because anybody can participate in it. It's an open source software, so you can continue developing these things. So it's completely open, right? Anybody can participate. Whereas private is designed for enterprises, basically, or some kind of group of enterprises that only want to share information between themselves and nobody from outside. So it's a very closed system. You don't continue to develop anything on top of it unless the shared group have decided they want to build more things on it. So it's quite different in that sense. What I find that the difficulties of private blockchain adoption is that the security part is much lower, right? Because if you have 10,000 computers, making sure that the network is running, and if you do on a private blockchain and you only have 5 companies, it's the chances are of getting hacked is much higher than that, right?
Right. So my question is, where do you see blockchain, this technology, evolving in the next 3 years, next 3 to 5 years time horizon?
Well, the blockchain technology right now, I still think that it's still finding its kind of nesting ground,
right?
To my understanding. So I guess in the financial industry, it's much more easy to adopt because you see the value in it. I personally think that the whole entirety of the securities market should be settled on blockchain. Right, because it's just, as I said earlier, it doesn't make sense for doing T+2 when everything's automated, right? So I think that the capital markets will start adopting this much quicker than the other industries. So maybe supply chain will come next. In my mind, as I said, technology is not the issue, right?
Right. So the question is, now that blockchain is already here, and I see that blockchain is one of those transformative technologies that's happening. We have already digitized everything. We have digitized knowledge through the internet, and we have all these new convergence of digital technology coming into play. So the only thing that today, one of the major institutions that's not fully digitized is the financial institutions, right? And you rightly say that digital does play a big part, and blockchain does play a big part in optimizing some of these processes within the financial industry. Now, when we also look at some of these technology that's coming together, we are seeing a convergence of digital innovation. And one of the other biggest disruptors or changes that's coming to play right now that we are seeing in front of us is artificial intelligence. So how do you see these two technologies, artificial intelligence and blockchain, coming together to transform the way we work, the way we live, the way we go about our lives?
So there are different types of blockchains. So, there are blockchains where you don't really call them blockchains, but they are designed for IoT. Right. So let's say you have a lot of sensors and cameras around the city, and they're processing these small bits of information. They're capturing these little bits of information, and then what the AI can do is take those information and then say to talk to let's say a self-driving car that there's traffic along this way, so maybe you should take this route, or if you want to go down to the more authoritarian government kind of idea, then you can tell these sensors could be telling the government, this person is doing such and such, and his social score could be downgraded to this level or something like that. So I think the use of this can be applied in many ways, but I find that right now what I see actually happening is that this kind of combination of AI, IoT, and blockchain is probably the most interesting part of kind of building up a smart city.
Yeah, but what I think you said was very relevant, because earlier you said that one of the key characteristics of blockchain is because of security, right? Because it's almost impossible to hack a blockchain, right? And when we talk about IoT, 5G, and AI, one of the greatest concerns is cybersecurity in terms of adoption. If you are able to combine these two and put this and secure it like that, then I think the adoption for everything will start to increase, right? And I think that's a great thing, right? Because today, if you tell me that the whole world goes on driverless cars, if the security layer is not taken care, the sensors are not taken care, I have a real concern here, right? So I think this is very exciting, and it's very exciting for our audience to know that how these technologies interplay with each other and how they augment each other and how it will come together in the future. Now, Taka, before I go to the corporates, right, for our lay, I won't say lay for person out there, but for people who are on the streets, right, who wants to know a little bit about this topic about blockchain, what are some of the things that you ask them to do to get themselves knowledge up on this particular topic?
See, when I started reading about this technology probably around 2016, there weren't that many information sources out there. Obviously, I did tons of Google searches around the topic. I read many books that were out there to understand a lot more about this technology. There's no one source that you can go and say, oh, I learned everything, because this industry is rapidly changing, and I don't even see where this industry is going in 2-3 months time. So even if you're reading something now, it can be potentially obsolete by the time, in 5-6 months. So I think what's important is try to network with the people who are in this industry to keep yourself updated, because those people are also having a hard time keeping up with this industry, right?
Right.
So there's never a lack of new information coming out in this industry, which makes it extremely interesting. And that's why I love being in this crypto blockchain kind of industry, because there's no shortage of ideas and concepts that are coming out, which is, I think, is just fascinating.
Yeah. So Taka, what you're saying is that, when for our audience who want to coexist and understand some of this digital innovation that's coming out, I think lifelong learning is important. Continuously get yourself educated, right? And I think that's the only security that's going to secure you for the future, right? And this is interesting because I think that we talked a little bit earlier about AI. It's the same thing, right? Some of these technologies evolving so fast, it's almost impossible to nail down. Right, you or myself, even running an AI company, it's just impossible. Things are moving just too fast. So I think that it is important that we adopt a learning mindset and be curious about where this technology is going, and always educate ourselves to be on top of things, to be ahead of things, right? So that we can use this information to optimize our lives.
For sure.
Now, I know that you have spent a lot of time with a lot of great leaders out there advising corporates about blockchain. Now, for some of our leaders out there today who are thinking about moving to blockchain, and there's a lot of them, right? What would your advice be your advice to these leaders? What are some of the things that they should look out for? And is there some low-hanging fruits that they or easy wins that they can adopt for blockchain technology adoption?
It's a very interesting question, because I guess every industry is quite different. So, I can't give you some kind of blanket answer. But I think what's important is try to be open-minded, right? And I think the bottleneck for a lot of the companies to prevent themselves from innovating is that they don't want change, because one, maybe they have to completely change their whole system altogether. They might have to reduce headcount. They might have to change organizational structures, and it's a hell of a lot of work. Just to incorporate, one fancy new technology into their business model. So, but the thing is, this, if you don't adapt and if you don't kind of continuously evolve as a corporation, you're definitely going to be left behind. So, I know a lot of companies, they decide, we want to be innovative, so we have an innovation lab, and we have a corporate VC and all these things, and you try all these superficial layers of things that you try to make yourself look like you're innovative, but it doesn't really fundamentally change how your business is, really, right?
Because marketing, right?
Yeah, it's completely marketing, and you're not really dealing with the real problem. Is that, if you want to do AI, or if you want to do blockchain, or all these things, it eventually is going to change your company completely, right? It is going to make your company super lean. You probably won't need to have all these people on board. You probably don't need to have this hierarchical structure in your company, because you don't have that many people. It can change your whole business model completely, right? So, if you're scared of that kind of change, then you're not going to take that step. And if you don't take that step, you're going to be obsolete. So, if you're a business owner, embrace that, right? Because you have to really understand where this world is going towards. And if you don't do it, then somebody else will.
Right.
And I think in this, kind of region that we're living in, we look at Europe, or we look at US and say, those guys are doing it over there, so let's see how they do, and then we'll slowly, do it here. But the thing is, companies right now all over the world are very global right now, right? There's no such thing as Asian companies. There's no such thing as US companies. Maybe their headquarters is there, but their business is also in Asia too.
Right.
So if you're watching people all, across the Pacific, across the Indian Ocean, wherever it is, and checking out what they're doing, and then you're going to take, the step afterwards, then you're going to be obsolete by the
Right.
time too.
Right.
Right? You're going to fall behind in market share. The other companies are going to be a lot more leaner than you before. Then you don't really have anything anymore. So it's just that kind of leap of faith that people have to take and really start to think about, what is my company going to look like in 10 years, 15, 20 years, and make those like long, term view strategical, improvements in your business. Because it's just not going to look like that, and because if you think about 10 years now, it probably, chances are it's going to happen in 5 years.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Because the velocity of change is just doubling up every time,
It's
right?
exponential, right?
Yes.
So even if you do 10 years, it's going to be 5 years. So if you don't do it now, it's going to be tomorrow,
Yeah.
right? So that's kind of what I think.
Yeah. So I think that it's important for us to reimagine what the business landscape is going to be, right? And what's your role in the business landscape. And I think you rightly point out that if you don't start today, then when, right? And the world is not going to wait for you, right? The world is going to progress with or without you doing anything. And there was this interesting thing that I was just speaking to the other guest that day. I said that even you want to do technologies like AI, the data, to get the real data takes time. You cannot say that, let me start slowly, right? I mean, by the time you start and you gather the right ingredients, the game's over. Right? So I think it's important that we get clarity. I think was one of the things, and then we can immediately reimagine and we can start. We can feel, but we have to start. I think that's important, and innovation is not going to stop.
Yeah.
Would you say that?
Yeah, sure, of course. Because, the management board have a finite length of time that they're going to be in a company, right?
Yes.
But the company itself is infinite.
Right.
Right? It'll live on potentially, if you run it right, forever. So if you're thinking you're at 50 or you're at 60 years old and you're only thinking about your retirement in 5-10 years, you're basing your kind of
Time horizon.
time horizon or conservatism about your career, right, or your profession in that kind of timeline, then you're not adjusting to the infinite timeline of the company that you're working for, right? So they have to completely change that.
Wow, that's a complete relook at even at the hierarchy of the company, and the org chart have to be optimized for speed, right?
Yeah.
And that's very interesting because that's what we are seeing, right? I think speed is so important in today's world. But let me then switch gear a little bit, because we talk about during the first couple of minutes we spoke a little bit about Bitcoin, right? And let me bring this conversation back to Bitcoin, because I know that that's one of the most exciting or most talked about topic in today's world, and this resides on the blockchain technology as well. But what exactly is Bitcoin? I know that you are mentioning it is a type of currency, digital currency, but how do you see this digital currency and flat currency, like the cash that we are having? How do they coexist?
So let me just take you the first part of the question. So what is Bitcoin? So as I said in the beginning, when Satoshi Nakamoto came out, they said we need to have a peer-to-peer cash system that doesn't depend on intermediaries. So the concept there was that you have Visa or MasterCard, you have banks, you have all these PayPal, whoever they are, that are actually the middlemen in between you and the other person that wants to receive that value, right, or that money. So if we take these people out of the equation, you're taking out transfer fees, you're taking out fraud, you're taking out various kind of misappropriations of money, basically, right? And why do I need another company to process my payment from one, me to you, Tony, if I could just kind of send it to you instantly over, it could be right now, I guess it could be any wallet that you have. Do I really need these companies to do it if I have an efficient technology that allows me to do it? Right? So let's take out, the initial idea was, let's take these people out of the equation and be able to kind of monitor our money, move our money the way we want it to without being reliant on these third parties, right? And I think that was the initial idea.
Right.
Obviously, I don't think Satoshi Nakamoto thought that it's going to be like a Visa or a MasterCard, because the transaction speeds on these things are massively slower than how Visa and MasterCard can process payments. So maybe he wasn't thinking about it's going to be something on a daily basis that we're going to be transferring. So maybe he thought it was something a little bit more different, like if I want to move from one country to another, can I send money across? I'll give you an interesting example, and this is purely the reason why I started loving this kind of whole movement, is that my wife is from Uruguay, and she has many friends that work in Argentina. or live in Argentina. And, as you know, like the past 20 years, the countries have gone through defaults so many times.
Right.
And inflation's rampant in that country, right? And so because of that reason, everybody in that country, or even Uruguay too, saves in US dollars. And everything that's everything that's expensive is quoted in US dollars. So whether it's your house, your cars, your nice watch, whatever it is, everything is in US dollars. Daily stuff like groceries, in pesos. So if you're buying real estate or you're selling real estate and you're receiving US dollars and you're putting that into the bank account, if you're having failures in monetary policies in your country and the banks are going to foreclose all the time, and they're going to take your US dollars, right? Or the government, if their US cash reserves run low to defend their own currency from inflation, they're going to tap into those bank accounts, US dollars, and take it away. Right. So basically, nobody wants to bring their US dollars into a bank account because they'll never see it again. So what they do is Argentinians used to take bags full of US dollars and cross the border into Uruguay and put it into Uruguayan banks because they knew it was safer. Now, fast forward, to the present time, one of my wife's friends said, I want to migrate to Canada, but I have real estate in Argentina. I want to sell it, and obviously it's going to be US dollars. How do I bring this across to Canada without using the banking system? It's cryptocurrency, right? That's the only way that I can really think of, or I can advise her to how to do this. So what she can do is take that US dollars and then open up a cryptocurrency exchange in Argentina, and convert it into crypto, whatever it is, Bitcoin, whatever it is, and then send that into your Ledger Nano or some kind of thumb drive, and just travel across to Canada, open up a bank account, open up a crypto exchange account, send that crypto into that crypto exchange, convert that into US dollars or Canadian dollars or whatever it is, and voila, right?
Wow. Yeah.
So there's many countries like this, right? And this is why I thought the idea of this is completely brilliant, but at the same time, there's a lot of governments that don't want that to happen, right? For obvious reasons. But they can't stop that because this is internet money.
Yep.
There's no borders.
Decentralized, right?
Yeah, there's no borders. Government can't shut down 10,000 computers, right? So, this is the reason why I thought, Bitcoin would be interesting. Now, going back to that, how many transaction speeds and all that stuff, Bitcoin is old, right? It's now like in its 12th year, and it was really not designed to do fast payments, right? And of course, there's new technology coming out, like Lightning Network, that wants to do off-chain payments, quick payments that doesn't involve the blockchain. But fundamentally, it is your kind of, how would you call it? Like a Ford Model T. It's the first car that was ever invented, right? And now, with the invention of Ethereum and then so many other different companies that are trying to outwin this whole who's going to be the best blockchain protocol in the world, it's gone far beyond what is Bitcoin or if Bitcoin, that kind of stuff. And, we're bringing all this stuff into the internet where people can exchange value over the internet, or you could be in cyberspace the whole time, like in a VR world, where you can exchange value in that kind of world. So, if you're thinking about if I should buy Bitcoin or when Bitcoin, that kind of stuff, you're still trying to dismount the horse when when there's the T model, Ford Model T is already running, but now the whole kind of crypto world has moved on to 1969 where they're driving Mustangs already, right? So if you're thinking about buying Bitcoin, it's like, or is it like scammy or whatever it is, you're still on that horse.
Right. So what you're saying is that there is before I go to the Bitcoin in terms of the value and some of these speculations that's going out there, right? So for these digital currencies, right, we already know that when you are playing games, as you rightly said, we're already using digital currencies for exchange of goods and stuff like that for the longest time. So maybe it's just that now with Bitcoin, it's more commercialized. Do you think that one day this type of digital currency will just replace the entire banking system and the notes that we are using as we know it?
So I don't think that the governments will start accepting Bitcoin as legal tender, or adopting Bitcoin as like a reserve for their own treasuries, right? some people may disagree with me, but it's just kind of not my idea. Now you have like countries like China or many other countries too that are looking to take in blockchain technology, take in the cryptocurrency model, and then making that into their own, renminbi or US dollars or whatever they are. So it's easily adoptable for replacing what we have as currently as physical cash. Now, is that the same concept as Bitcoin and all the other cryptocurrencies? Completely different, right? Because if you have a government-based currency, and what they're doing with that currency is completely inflating it every time there's some kind of crisis.
Right.
So yeah, sure, they can create more of their own cryptocurrencies or whatever you want to call them. In this world we call it CBDC, central bank digital currency. So they can issue more and more CBDC. But is that the same as your finite supply of Bitcoin of 21 million?
Yes,
it's completely
exactly.
different, right? So yes, they can adopt it, but it's not going to be the same.
So, and this brings up to the next question that I was just curious. And you say there's a finite supply of 21 million for Bitcoin, but we are seeing people keep on mining these coins, right? Is there, and when do these coins runs out by? Because there's only 21 million. And why are there so many incentives for people to keep mining? As I understand it, that it's getting harder and harder to mine these coins, right?
Sure, but the prices keep going up as well. So the energy and the kind of operational cost in order to, keep those crypto mining operations running versus, where the crypto or Bitcoin in this case, where the price is, if there's still a spread between that, then you're still making money. So there is a reason why people are still doing it. And if you're able to secure energy costs at much cheaper levels, then your incentive to keep crypto mining going is still there, right?
And what's your personal opinion, Taka, about all this speculation that's going on this digital currency like Bitcoin? I know that there's so much hype and speculation in this area, right? Even my mom is talking about it, right? So what's your personal opinion about this speculation? Is this something that you think is sustainable? Is it something that because there's two schools of thoughts. Some people say that this is all a hype, it will crash, and then there's another school of thought will say that, look, guys, this is the future. Right? It's going to go beyond 100,000. It's going to hit 160,000. I'm not going to hold you to it, Taka, of course. But what's your personal take about this whole thing about this frenzy around Bitcoin?
Right. Well, I don't think it's just about Bitcoin. It's about most of the cryptocurrencies out there. Now, initially, going back again with the same concept of Bitcoin, was it really created to be speculated? No, it was probably not. But was it destined to? Probably, because you created tokens out of thin air, and people started giving value to it. So of course, there's going to be a lot of people who are interested in that and try to make more money off of it. And especially if there's a lot of volatility, then more opportunities for you to make money, right? And do I like it or not is not really an issue. Now it's gone far beyond is it good to be speculated, and it just went far beyond that. And it's not even a conversation anymore, a conversational topic anymore. It's more about like what this industry is creating out of these speculative asset class. Now, the regulated markets in securities or capital markets, you have a limitation on what you can create, and you also have to get an approval each time to make sure it's under the regulatory regime. Now, crypto is in many ways is a very unregulated asset class, so you can create anything out of the cryptos. So, excuse me. So right now, there are exchanges that are offering extremely interesting and derivative products out of crypto, whether it be, betting on who's going to win the U.S. Presidential campaign, or, what's the possibility of when the vaccines are going to be done, or something. You could do anything. You could create any tokens out of any betting kind of things, or you can actually make real interesting, creative financial derivatives out of crypto as well. So now, right now, because there's so much corporate interest in Bitcoin holding that, Elon Musk has bought 1.5 billion of Bitcoin for Tesla, or MicroStrategies of the world. Those companies are buying and holding Bitcoins. There's a massive shortage of Bitcoins in the spot market. So there are exchanges that came up with this concept of perpetual swaps, where you just post your own collateral. In this case, it's like the U.S. dollar stablecoin, which is like 1-to-1 with the U.S. dollars, and people can post collateral with the U.S. dollar amount and buy perpetual swaps, meaning like swaps are usually you have a date of delivery, but this one has none, right? So it goes on forever. So basically it mirrors the spot market, but you don't have to actually buy Bitcoin, or you don't have to find Bitcoin to do this trade. You can hypothetically buy a derivative that's reflective of the Bitcoin spot market. So that this doesn't exist in the financial world or the traditional capital markets. So this thing has gone way beyond is it good to speculate kind of stuff, right? So my view is yes, there's going to be a lot more interesting things created. I think crypto market has revolutionized or innovated far beyond what traditional financial institutions have done, and it's just going to keep on going.
Wow, I mean, just listening to that conversation, my mind is really twisted with all the facts that you have mentioned. That's how big this thing is grown, and there's so much innovation that's happening in this space, Taka. I mean, thanks for sharing with this. I think without your kind of deep insights, I will never understand that it has come to this stage, right? With some of these currencies that we're talking about. And from this whole conversation, Taka, I mean, we spoke about the power of blockchain, we talk about adoption of blockchain, we talk about Bitcoin, right, and where Bitcoin is heading and stuff like that. And all these are good and great. But I just want to know a little bit about you as a person, right? I mean, you have been doing so much, right? You're running podcasts, and you have been heading some of the most innovative companies in the market today, and you have been an investment banker and stuff like that. It sounds like you're almost perfect, Taka. Has there been a time, where you really hit a low point in your life? Because I know that for me, I definitely hit a lot of low points, right? Is there a time when you hit a low point in your life as you were, growing into all these capabilities, and how did you overcome periods like that?
Sure, I can remember many points actually. What you know about me is really on the superficial level, what you see on a resume, so it looks probably really good. But look, I mean, we talked about me moving to the U.S. from Japan when I was 5. I didn't speak a word of English. I was kind of, bullied, ridiculed, in that, it was just like early 1980s where racism, still is, but it was quite rampant as well. I was thrown into this extremely white community. Nobody was Asian around me, so I had to learn the language and kind of blend in with American society when I was at that 5 years old. And then I did, and I kind of felt American while I was living there. And then it came a point where my family had to move back to Japan. By that time, my Japanese language capabilities was that of a 5-year-old. I went back, high school student, came and speak proper sentences in Japanese. Again, ridiculed, bullied. But all these kind of life changes, especially while you're kind of in this grade school, or this young age, makes you quite precocious, because you're forced to kind of react to trying to be adaptive, kind of embracing things, and then learning your kind of setbacks and try to keep up and learn, push harder and stuff, right? I mean, some people can just fall back and say, I can't do this anymore, and decide not that they want to, continue on with their life. And, I know some people like that as well. Or I know people who came back from the U.S. or some other country back to Japan, and they couldn't find their place in society. Am I American? Am I Japanese? And they kind of chose sides and said, you know what, I'm just going to be American, and then, screw these Japanese people, I'm just going to be American, or the other way around. I kind of found that nice balance in between where I could be both, like, why do you need to, I could be Japanese, I could be, American or whatever it is, and try to fit in, kind of switch, like flick the switch, back and forth that I wanted to, and find that balance. So, I guess that was kind of for me to like learn how to be more adaptive, right? And then, fast forward a little bit, and I got into my first job at JP Morgan, and I was thrown into FX option trading. My major in university was political science. Wow. I had nothing about financial derivatives, and I had no idea why they even put me in that position, because I thought I applied for a sales job. And Yeah, I mean, the first day of the job, they said, "Well, do you know Black Scholes?" Which is a very complicated pricing model based off of how the air moves around the candle, right?
Wow,
the
okay.
flame of the candle.
Right.
And I said, I have no idea, sir. And I don't even know what pricing these things are. And they said, well, you sit with us and you learn on the job. And we're not going to give you like a proper training sit down kind of thing. So I sat there for like a year and a half, still didn't get it. They fired me. And then I had to go find something different. So, I at the time, Japan was like going through a financial cleanup of banks, and Goldman Sachs was buying a lot of these distressed loan portfolios from banks that they accumulated since the during the bubble times of Japan. And I had to quickly learn new things in a company like Goldman Sachs, where they give you no slack for any mistakes, and learn very rapidly how to do these things. Because I was already a year and a half into my career. I couldn't be just like a brand new fresh grad, and so I had to kick it up several notches. So that put me in a very difficult spot as well. And then continued on. I was very mindset was I don't really want to. I don't feel like I'm working for a company. I was like, I always felt that I want to extract a lot of value from this and upgrade myself every single time. And maybe that kind of goes back to when I was a child too. Like, every time I had to upgrade, right? Like upgrade yeah, exactly. And that's what I wanted to do every time I got into a new post. It's like, I want to, upgrade. I want to get into a new team. I want to start a new team inside this company or bank. When I went into hedge funds as well, I wanted to get into a new hedge fund because, we're creating something new. I even started my own hedge fund and then created something new, right? So, but every single time, because you're starting something new, there's lots of setbacks, right? Lots of sleepless nights and crankiness and everything that comes with it. So yes, it's not like a smooth sailing that I was on a nice corporate track that I became like a managing director of Goldman Sachs. No, it's completely different. I went the completely thorny road where I've been stepping on the thorns all the way to get to where I am. So I'm more like right now. Some people might think it's all shiny and everything at the end, but I'm just bruised up.
Right.
Right. I'm a person who just came out of battle all bruised up. And
well, you know what they say, right? When you have a scalp on your skin is much stronger.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
And that's exactly what it is.
And throwing yourself into those chaos every single time you want to do something new, you come out completely different, right? And that's kind of what I think that made me mentally stronger, physically stronger, and everything else that comes with it.
So if I'm going to ask you to re-choose your life to go through this path again, would you? To be where you are today?
Yeah, I'm the same person, right? This is my journey in life, and I'm enjoying this journey, even though there's been a lot of setbacks. Even during this COVID time last year, I had my own company that was doing blockchain enterprise solutions. I had to shut that down because all the projects that I've done got all canceled. I poured in a lot of my savings that I had from my financial times to put into this business, but it all went to zero. So in a way, I have to kind of recreate myself again. But, I don't regret what I did. I made my choice. I take responsibility for those choices, and I just kind of move on, right? And right now at this company called Copper, which is a crypto custodian and prime brokerage, and I'm heading the APAC business here. I'm brand new start. Again, there's a lot of difficulties that come with, starting this thing, from ground up in Asia. But, this is a journey I'm choosing, right?
Yes.
This is me, so I wouldn't change anything about it.
I want to point out a few things that I really like about you. First of all, I'm hearing adaptability. Second of all, it's a simple word, but it's not something that everybody gets, is to accept responsibility. I think that's very empowering. And the reinvention of yourself. I think you have gone through so much reiterations and reinventions, right? And you have never let that take you down, right? You find that vision, you find that clarity to keep on improving. And most importantly, you said something that's important. You need to enjoy that journey, right? Life is a journey, it's not a destination. And we are all on the same journey together. So I think if you put all this together, you'll find that you'll be able to weather the storms in life, and you probably will come out on top of it every time. And that's what happens to you, Taka. And I think this is a good example for our audience, right? When, every one of us have some setbacks in life. But if we take responsibility and we focus and we continue to learn, we will always be on top. So thank you so much, Taka, for sharing this gold nuggets of wisdom with our audience today. And also, thank you so much for sharing a little bit about this complicated topic. To me, at least, I think it's complicated. About blockchain, and you unpack it and you simplify it and you give us examples about the usage of blockchain and also where Bitcoin is heading, so that our audience can have a better perspective of these technologies that we are talking about. And I look forward, Taka, maybe we will catch up again to have a deeper conversation around some of these topics we just mentioned. But on behalf of the Tony Tan Show and podcast, I really, really thank you for being with us this afternoon, and appreciate all the expert feedback you have given us and all this advice.
No, it was certainly my pleasure. Thank you very much for your time and opportunity, and the audience for giving me an ear.
Thank you so much, Taka. I'll catch up with you again.
Thank you.